Our next storyteller is Anisa Wiseman. She's the program manager for NAMI Hawaii. She's a former special education teacher. She's a business owner, and she's successfully living in recovery from PTSD and anxiety. She has family members with addiction disorder and serious mental illness. Please join me in warmly welcoming Anisa to the stage.
Hi guys. Mariko got me in like all the feels. I want to first start off by addressing the big, huge elephant in the room for me and saying how terrifying it is for me to be up here and to be speaking about something that I was once very ashamed of. But at the same time, I know that there was a point where I couldn't be up here, so I see it as my privilege or my responsibility now to do so. And I hope that you all know the importance of sharing your own stories as well. So I work for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We provide support, education, and awareness, mostly to family members, because usually when somebody's in crisis, they're not able to make that phone call. It's usually the family members calling us, what do I do? How do I help my loved one? So we have support groups, and we have family-to-family classes that we provide. I'm diagnosed with PTSD and severe anxiety. My mother is diagnosed with bipolar disorder. I love her so much, and she is one of the most courageous women I know. Oftentimes, if you have a single parent without health care, resources, or support, then kind of comes everything else, the domestic violence, the homelessness, the substance abuse, it all kind of flows together. And we were part of the revolving door, where you're low income, so you qualify for health insurance, you get health insurance, you start to stabilize, you get a job, but uh-oh, you're making too much money. So we're going to take away that health insurance. And a lot of my mother's medications were like $700 a month for a 30-day supply. There was no way we could afford that without health insurance. And this is the storyline for a lot of people, not just me. So nausea, sweats, trembling, weakness, that's usually the start of my panic attacks. It starts when I open my eyes. Maybe I'm able to get out of bed. But I always end up on the ground. There are times I'm in bed and I'm trying to breathe through it. Please don't make me end up on the bathroom floor, I say to myself. Please don't let me throw up. I don't want to feel this way. I hate feeling this way. I don't understand how I can be totally right in my mind, but my body disagrees with me. Do I just think that I have my mind under control when really I don't? Usually it ends up with my head leaning against the toilet. The purge surprisingly makes me feel better. Maybe I got it out, wait for it to pass. I'm always waiting for it to pass. It's what fear feels like. Fear takes hold of my body, and I take a back seat to control. I guess I haven't seen myself as brave enough, or my body just doesn't believe me. I beg and I plead for it to believe me, because I do believe I'm brave and I can make it through. But why don't I feel like that too? All I can do is surrender and wait for it to pass. At some point beyond my control, it always passes. This was my life, day in and day out. I have a codependency problem with my brother. It got really bad when he relapsed. I just couldn't take it. I was triggered. Yet again, I was not enough. Everything that I had given, emotionally, physically, financially, it was not enough, and it crushed me. When my anxiety was at its worst, I had just started teaching special education, and I was making the drive from Pupukea to Pearl City every day to teach. I got to the point where I had to literally set my alarm an extra 20 minutes every morning for me to just be nauseous. I had to wake up sooner, which in turn made my anxiety worse because I already had a hard time sleeping, and I needed that sleep. Again, it would start in bed. I would be able to make it to the shower, spend some time on the ground for a bit, muster the courage to stand up, get out of the shower, make it back to my bed, have to get in for a little while longer, and then muster up the courage to get dressed and finally leave the house. It did not stop in the car. Tears would flow down my cheeks, And sometimes I would get frustrated because it was hard to see. All the hurt and pain and fear all came up to the surface, and for the life of me, I could not force it back down. These were emotional flashbacks. It was no longer about what triggered me. I was just in all the feelings. There was so much, and it was so overwhelming. When I was growing up, I had no idea what I was feeling, let alone how to cope with it. I didn't get taught coping skills. Emotional intelligence is not part of the curriculum. And so I picked up negative ones, self-harm being one of them. It was a very unhealthy way for me to get out of the emotional pain. I was a mess, but no one knew. I felt weak, and I didn't want to burden anybody else with my stuff. I would get to school, park my car, take some breaths, check the mirror, wipe my eyes. I even had eye drops I would put in, put on a smile, get out of the car, and walk to class, saying good morning to all the kids, teachers, and staff I met along the way with a smile on, and to them, they had no clue of the emotional roller coaster I was just on. I did this nearly every day. I could not escape the misery. Something so small would trigger me, and I was all back in it. I would have an emotional flashback, and soon all the walls were coming down. I was in a deep, dark hole, and there was no way out. It happened every time I was alone, in my room, in the shower, in the car, in the bathroom, everywhere. I was very high functioning. I always have been. I love my students, and I was their teacher in every way. And I was a good teacher. My mentor, my principal, no one wanted me to stop teaching because it came so naturally to me. So I thought I needed to continue because I always did what was needed of me. At the time, I was also working events. I would go and do wine tastings at different stores because, being a teacher doesn't pay all the bills. I was at Safeway in town, and I had a tasting. After the exhausting drive there, I spent the evening talking about wine and having people come to the table to taste it, pretending everything was fine, and that was exhausting. It took everything in me to keep the smile on and not burst into tears. It was a fight. I was really struggling that night. I remember I made it to the parking lot, loaded my car, and sat in the driver's seat and just fell into it all. I felt so hopeless and not in control. I knew I needed help. I emailed my psychiatrist, asking him about Castle, and wondering if it would affect my job in any way. I was worried about the stigma. Immediately, he called me. He answered all of my questions and tried to calm me down. He was worried about my emotional state, but he didn't want me to go to Castle either because of stigma. He asked me if there was another safe place I could go, but I told him no, I didn't feel like there was a place I could go. I'd feel like I needed to hold it together, and I was so tired of holding it together. So he supported me in my decision to go to Castle and drove straight there. I remember walking into the emergency room and not quite knowing what to do or what to say or how to ask for help, but I did it. It was part of my recovery. I have relapsed since then, but that's all part of recovery too. It's a chance to grow new pathways, make new decisions, and get back up again. Recovery for me is an active process. I was on medication and therapy for a very long time, but I'm happy to say that I'm not anymore. That's not me stigmatizing meds in any way, because it did help me for a part of my life. I use coping skills now, and coping skills aren't just something that I go to when I'm feeling stressed out. They are things that I go to every day. I integrate them into my life every day, because for me it's all about balance, and if I'm already up here and I don't keep myself balanced, it's really easy for me to lose it. I see it kind of like we have this coping skills toolbox, and you just kind of keep putting things in there. Sometimes it's just 10 minutes of the day with myself to do some stretching, breathing, or meditating, and just check in with me and see where I'm holding stuff and what I'm really feeling underneath my day. Sometimes you'll pull something out of your toolbox and it won't work, and that's okay. You just reach for another one. And sometimes there'll be the days when you don't have anything left in you, and it's about just reaching for one. It's all about baby steps, which really are big, giant steps. And it's about starting right now, because prevention does not have to be hard, but crisis sure as hell is. Thank you.